Hi everyone, good to see you guys. Welcome to my room. Beautiful Friday, great weather, very happy. I mean, look at this. Look at that. I mean, that is what you would call great weather. Oh, and you can have a look at my desk as well. These are the books that I use as support for my camera. You see, it's all very highbrow. There you have Marcel Proust, In Search of Lost Time, the book I'm reading at the moment. And then you have some stuff on romanticism. So yeah, it's pretty highbrow. And then that's a bit less highbrow. It's an old box of Final Fantasy stuff. Anyway, that's not the point of this video. I wanted to tackle the question of the INFJ sense of humor because it's a topic that seems to elude me a little bit. I'm still not sure how to make heads or tails of it. Oh, and by the way, Hazelnut is here today, so I just wanted to, you know where she is in the bed. Oh no, it's a jumper. Sorry. Okay, you see, that's my humor. That's my humor. It's terrible. It's. Oh, I was gonna say something even more terrible. I was gonna say this is censor humor. Oh my god, this is bad. This is bad, and really unfair too because some of my favorite comedians are actually ST comedians, ESTP comedians. I can find quite funny. And sometimes I think that my humor is actually really not that deep, and that's part of the reason why I am I'm still perplexed by this question of the INFJ sense of humor, because I feel like there are some aspects to the INFJ sense of humor that I relate to, and I've been able to refer to them at many at many stages during my videos in the past. But what I've been saying about the INFJ sense of humor is not really about the substance of the sense of humor. It's more about the difference between what one may think of an INFJ upon first encounter, that this person is maybe a tiny little bit reserved, a tiny bit serious, and is not likely to have a wacky sense of humor. And then upon getting to know them better, the INFJ feels more comfortable and reveals in a greater sort of level of detail that actually they have pretty irreverent and provocative sense of humor. I mean, they can definitely have that, because you see, if you go back to this distinction between FI and FE. Let's say that, I mean, of course, FI users, just like FE users, can appreciate irreverent humor or provocative humor. But the provocative humor, the humor that is almost a little bit borderline, it tests the standards of either good taste or what ought to be said or what ought not to be said, or what's immoral to say or whatever, So obviously humor is this battleground where one ought to try to go as well. One does not have to, but it's a possible view of a stand-up comedian, that a stand-up comedian derives a certain value from going as far as they can. They're testing people's expectations and sometimes beating people's expectations. But in order to do that, there is probably a certain dimension of transgression involved. And I do like transgressive. I guess that's the word that I wanted to use. I like comedians that are transgressive in a way. And therefore, some of the stuff I like, there are some people, in my circles of friends, for example, that find them a little bit unpalatable. Not many, but, some, let's say, because they would say, oh, they're a bit too vulgar, or they're a bit too provocative, or whatever. And it's funny because they're almost never FE users, because even though the FE users might not actually think this is the most hilarious stuff, because of FE, they'll be a little bit less, they'll be a bit more fluid in their appreciation of humor, I find. An FI user, if they like it, then they like it, but if they think it's kind of against their morals, or if it's too transgressive for them, they usually just don't they'll be less open to changing their mind. I find it's a bit more black or white, although obviously it is not completely black or white. And so I think that's one key to understanding why INFJ humor can be quite surprising, is that there is this exterior of wanting harmony in any particular given environment, which, as long as it is kind of a superficial environment, the generic stance will be that of being more or less adapted to generic expectations. So usually not very transgressive. But then, like, through the very same use of FE, among other things, and TI too, when things become more comfortable, the INFJ will let themselves go a bit more, because they'll know by then that having taken the pulse of their relationship with people, that they can be themselves with these people. Now, so that's kind of the context for the INFJ humor, I think, that I believe a lot of INFJs will relate to. This idea of having a certain flexibility in regards to one's humor, and not easily being shocked by certain types of humor. Being quite, clear about what they like or what they don't like, what they personally find a little bit, like, I don't know if unsavory is the word, but it's just stuff that they just don't like, and they'll say it, but it doesn't mean that they will be shaken down their very souls, as long as it's just humor. And so that's something I find a lot in INFJs. Now, that's not exactly humor itself. That's not the substance of humor, though. It's just the context in which humor is deployed, and the adaptability and variance in the humor that's deployed on the part of, in this instance, the INFJ. But I guess the substance of the humor is more about what kind of stuff, like, is there a kind of humor that INFJs are likely to gravitate towards? I find it's a little bit difficult to make like a clear, to pronounce a clear judgment on the matter, because it seems to me that, just in the same way that there are like 70 million INFJs on Earth, believe it or not, it's a lot of INFJs. It's a way to not feel as unique as one would like to feel sometimes, but especially if you're type 4. But there are probably something like 70 million INFJs on Earth, 1% of 7 billion. And so probably more now, because there's probably more than 7 billion people on Earth. In any case, you get the point. Well, the thing is, I quite definitely believe that there's probably a lot of different appreciations of humor on the part of INFJs, because you remember the distinction that I proposed to draw between the how and the what of a person's individuality and personality. I think for the what, which is the substance of a person's personality, the MBTI test is going to be limitedly helpful to tell that whatness. When it comes to the how of a person's personality, how they view things, how they perceive things, how they process information, how they express that information, how they manifest in relationship to the external environment, how they manifest in relationship to people outside, to their own thoughts. These things, these hows, I think, for that, I think the MBTI model can throw useful light along with other models. Now, where does humor stand in this case? Because, I think to some extent, if I'm interested in asking about the substance, the kind of humor that INFJ is like, it seems to be almost more of a what question, which would suggest that in this case the MBTI test, the MBTI model, is going to be only of limited use. That doesn't mean no use, but maybe limited use. And yet, at the same time, you could sort of manage to phrase the question about the substance of INFJ humor more as a how question, in the sense of asking, for example, how do INFJs like their humor, or how do they express it? But you'll notice there's a certain artificiality to asking the question in that way. It seems like just a somewhat hollow way of phrasing just what humor do the INFJs like, which seems to be more naturally a what question, which is probably partly, one second. Am I sneezing? I am sneezing, sorry. I've heard it's because of the sun. In the past, a friend of mine told me that in French that's called the réflexe photosternutatoire, the photosternutatory reflex. I don't know if that's the word in English, but in French that's what it is, which I find amusing. It took me forever to remember the words, probably because of my low SI. But anyway, so if it's a wild question, then perhaps there is no real answer to this question. But that's also why I want to ask you guys to let me know in the comments, what is your perspective on humor? What kind of humor do you like? Do you like it when it's a little bit caustic? What do you like it when it's a little bit biting? Do you like it when it's mostly benevolence and smart? Do you like it when it's smart and subtle and it's complex? Do you like it when it's absurd? Do you like it when it's sort of burlesque? Do you like it when it's really in your face? Do you like it when it's vulgar? You know, because the thing is, like, for example, in my case, I would say that to give you like my perspective on it, for all my pretense to having the intellect to create like a philosophical system or whatever, and despite the fact that I wear Wittgenstein t-shirts, I don't think my humor. My girlfriend says my humor is subtle and low key. So I mean, that's probably how it must come across to an extent. But I think like the stuff that, and that, because there's another distinction here between what humor does one employ with other people and what makes one laugh the most. Because I feel like it's not necessarily always like organically linked. I mean, there's a link definitely, but is it like a complete link? I'm not sure. Because I feel like a lot of the time what makes me laugh the most is not that clever. Like if someone narrates a joke to me, let's say, and the joke is long and smart and complex, I'm probably gonna say, oh yeah, it's smart. Wow, it's smart. Yeah, that's cool. But I wouldn't be sort of rolling on the floor laughing. And trust me, there are certain jokes in certain movies that make me laugh a lot. But I can laugh hysterically actually. My brother is very good at making me laugh hysterically because he's got this very vivid imagination. But my brother is really hilarious. He has a mind to make me laugh. But I think it's connected with this kind of symbiosis that we have together. You know, it's almost like as if we had connected minds, and I can almost tell what he's going to say, but not quite. And somehow this is very funny to me. It's like I can feel like the descriptions he's making, the humorous descriptions he's making. So I feel it's so strongly that it makes me laugh even more, if that's funny. But he makes my mom laugh like a lot as well, and everyone. He makes people laugh in the family. He makes people laugh more than me for sure. My dad also is quite funny, but for different reasons. My dad is more like he has an infectious kind of laughter, I think. He's funny too, like he's a very funny storyteller. My brother is not a super funny storyteller as such, but he has just remarks on anything. You ask him a question and he can answer something very absurd and it's completely hilarious. You know, it's more like on the moment, in the moment kind of. Whereas my dad's, it's more of a storytelling thing. It's not as spontaneous, and I think I'm kind of a little bit in between. But a lot of the time, it's just really what I like. So in movies, I like the movies that make me laugh the most are like the silent movies featuring Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Buster Keaton films, because he's kind of I think he's quite a famous silent movie comedian, well, actor comedian. He actually is involved, or he's the main creative force behind a masterpiece, an American masterpiece called the General, I think. The General, check it out. So it's a silent film. So because it's a silent film, it's not about clever jokes. It's all about burlesque humor. It's all about funny situations, mistakes he made with his hands, just really dumb. I mean, it's dumb in a sense. It's cleverly made, and that's kind of what makes me laugh the most. You know, I've really sensed that what makes me laugh the most is usually what's, apart from some instances, it tends to be stuff that is quite remote from the typical intellectual activity that I engage in day to day. It's often kind of really absurd, really like absurd, weird, and not necessarily complex, but it's more like either you get it or you don't. But it's not a question of being intelligent or not. It's something else. There's an artist I discovered maybe a year or two ago through a friend called Chris Simpson. Chris Simpson. He makes drawings that I really love, completely absurd stuff, but I really love it. Anyway, so I wouldn't say my humor is complex. I'd say it's probably a bit weird. And most of the people who like it among my friends are N types. But is it smart? Not necessarily, you know. So anyway, that was to give you a little peek into my approach to humor. Sorry if that was a little disorganized, but please, guys, let me know what is your humor. I'm going to focus this on INFJs, but please, if you're not INFJ, in the comments specify what your type is and what your approach to humor and appreciation of humor is to get a better perspective on type and humor. Alright, have a lovely Friday and weekend, guys. See you soon.